Welcome to Convert to Radians, a Pemberton Pre-Calculus podcast. Special edition number 1. Some things that you need to memorize. Here we have our 30, 60, 90 triangle. And assuming that the hypotenuse has a length of 1, the side across from the 30-degree angle has a length of 1/2. The side across from the 60-degree angle has a length of square root of 3/2. These are important values for determining the sine, cosine, and tangent of 30 degrees and 60 degrees. For example, sine of 30 degrees is opposite over hypotenuse, therefore it's 1/2. The cosine of 30 degrees is adjacent over hypotenuse, therefore square root of 3/2. The sine of 60 degrees is opposite over hypotenuse, making it square root of 3/2. And the cosine of 60 degrees is adjacent over hypotenuse, making it 1/2. The 45, 45, 90 degree triangle with a hypotenuse of 1 gives us the values for sine and cosine at 45 degrees. The sine of 45 degrees is opposite over hypotenuse, making it square root of 2. The cosine of 45 degrees is adjacent over hypotenuse, also making it square root of 2/2. You must memorize this chart to determine what the cosine and sine values are at each of the 90-degree marks. At 0 degrees, cosine has a value of 1, sine has a value of 0, corresponding to the point 1, 0 that is 1 unit away from the origin. At 90 degrees, cosine has a value of 0 and sine has a value of 1, also corresponding to a distance of 1 from the origin. At 180 degrees, cosine is -1, sine is 0. And at 270 degrees, cosine is 0, sine is -1. Coming full circle to 360 degrees, cosine is 1, sine is 0. You also need to know when is sine and cosine positive or negative in the various quadrants. If the angle is between 0 and 90 degrees, in the first quadrant, cosine is positive and sine is negative. If your angle is between 90 and 180, cosine is negative, sine is positive. Between 180 and 270 degrees, cosine is negative, sine is negative. And from 270 degrees to 360 degrees, cosine is positive, sine is negative. Memorize this. You also need to recognize reference angles because angles between 0 and 360 degrees can be broken down into a reference angle, and from there you can get the values of sine and cosine. For example, if I have a 45-degree angle, the reference angle is how far I am from the x-axis, in this case 45 degrees. At 120 degrees, I am 60 degrees away from this x-axis. At 210 degrees, I am 30 degrees away from the x-axis. And at 300 degrees, I am 60 degrees away from the x-axis. Each of these angles that are in red are considered reference angles, and you would take the sine, cosine, or tangent of these reference angles to replace the ones for 45, 120, 210, and 300 degrees. In a right triangle, you already know that the sine of an angle is its opposite side divided by the hypotenuse. The cosine of an angle is the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse, and tangent of an angle is the opposite side divided by the adjacent side. The reciprocal identities we know that sine and cosecant are reciprocals of each other. Sine is 1 over cosecant. Cosecant is 1 over sine. Cosecant and secant are reciprocals of each other. Cosecant is 1 over secant. Secant is 1 over cosine. Tangent and cotangent are reciprocals of each other. Tangent is 1 over cotangent. Cotangent is 1 over tangent. And then our other key identities, especially the two boxed off, we know that tangent is sine divided by cosine. Of course, cotangent being the reciprocal of tangent, we get cosine divides sine. The Pythagorean relationship between sine and cosine are that sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1. The other two relationships are derived from this one by dividing everything by cosine to get the second line and dividing everything by sine to get the bottom line. Memorize these. This ends the special edition number 1 of Convert to Radians, a Pemberton Pre-Calculus podcast. In this podcast, you learn various things that you need to memorize in order to find the exact values when we do trig functions. Happy studying!